This is Seymour Rocks reporting from Down Under. I'm making this video because I've come across an article from an old friend, Nafeez Ahmed in Britain, entitled Brexit Stage 1 in Europe's Slow Burn Energy Collapse. The Brexit fiasco and French riots are accelerating symptoms of Europe's Earth system crisis. This is dated on the December the 11th, 2018. So I'm going to read this now because I think it's important. Everyone's talking about Brexit, some about the French riots, but no one is talking about why they're happening and what they actually mean. They might think they are, but they are usually missing the point. On the 6th of May 2010, the Conservative Party took the reins of power for the first time since 1992, propped up with some help from the Liberal Democrats. Hours before the election result, I warned in a blog post that whatever government was elected, it would be the first step in a dramatic shift towards the far right that would likely sweep across the world within 10 years. Quote, the new government, beholden to conventional wisdom, will be unwilling or unable to get to grips with the root structural causes of the current convergence of crises facing this country and the world, I wrote, describing the failure of all three political parties to understand why the heyday of economic growth was unlikely to return. Quote, this suggests that in 5 to 10 years, the entire mainstream party political system in this country and many Western countries will be completely discredited as crises continue to escalate while mainstream policy solutions serve largely to contribute to them, not ameliorate them. The collapse of the mainstream party political system across the liberal democratic heartlands could pave the way for the increasing legitimization of far-right politics by the end of this decade. End of quote. My prediction was astonishingly prescient. The global shift to the far right began within exactly 5 years of my forecast and has continued to accelerate before the decade is even out. In 2014, far-right parties won 172 seats in the European Union elections, just under a quarter of all seats in the European Parliament. In 2015, David Cameron was re-elected as Prime Minister with a parliamentary majority, a victory attributed in part to his promise to hold a referendum on Britain's membership of the European Union. Unbeknownst to many, the Tories had quietly established wide-ranging links with many of the same far-right parties that were now capturing seats in the EU. In the following year, in June, the Brexit referendum shocked the world with its result, a majority vote to leave the EU. 6 months later, billionaire real estate guru Donald Trump shocked the world again when he became president of the world's most powerful country. Like the Conservatives in the UK, the Republicans too had forged transatlantic connections with the European parties and movements of the extreme right. Since then, far-right parties have made continued electoral gains across Europe in Italy, Sweden, Germany, France, Poland, and Hungary. We're on the cusp of a tidal wave that looks poised to accelerate into a tsunami. Exactly as I had anticipated, far-right politics is no longer the province of the fringe, but is becoming increasingly normalized. This is not an accident. It is the result of a system that is failing and the efforts of a network of far-right groups to exploit the fractures emerging from this system failure to tear everything down and erect a new order of their own fashioning. My prediction of the resurgence of the far right was based on analysing the probable consequences of a long-term system failure in which we are unable to return to the levels of economic growth we had become accustomed to in the heyday of the 1980s and 90s. That system failure, I explained, is rooted in the economics of the energy production that enables economic growth. Quote, a full and lasting recovery is likely to be impossible in the constraints of the current system because we're running short on the physical basis of the last few decades of exponential and fluctuating growth, in inverted commas, and that is cheap, easily available hydrocarbon energies, primarily oil, gas, and coal. The turning point has arrived, and without that global cheap energy source in abundant supply, we cannot continue growing no matter what we do. Something has to give. Our economics need to be fundamentally, structurally transformed. We need to transition to a new, clean, renewable energy system on which to base our economies. We need to transform the way money is created so that it is not linked to the systemic generation of debt. We need to transform our banking system on the same grounds. Whitehall and the three political parties recognise only facets of the picture, but they don't see it as a whole. So this is a long article, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to put the description in the down below. Of course, there are a lot of things that I can't quite agree with Nafeez on, especially those last paragraphs. I think it's truly too late for any of that, and of course he's not really taking into account the climate change tsunami. So, but he has caught the essence of the whole phenomenon, because nobody is looking at the true context of this. So I'm hoping that this will encourage people to look at Nafeez's article and to start doing some serious thinking about this. Thank you very much. This is Seymour Rocks from Down Under.